It is better to concentrate on perfecting a good idea than to hunt around for a new idea. On July 30th, 1863, Henry Ford was born on a farm in Dearborn, Michigan. There was too much hard hand labor on the Ford family farm and all other farms of the time. Henry Ford suspected that much could be done in a better way. That was what took him into mechanics, although his mother always said that he was born a mechanic. Ford Industries endeavored to evidence by works that the service they provide is more important than making money. At age 12, he saw a road engine about 8 miles out of Detroit one day when he was driving to town with his father. The vehicle was made by Nichols, Shepherd and Company of Battle Creek. From the time he saw that road engine as a boy of 12, his ambition was to make a machine that would travel the roads. At age 13, Ford tried for the first time to put a watch together so that it would keep time. By the time he was 15, he could do almost anything in watch repairing. His father wanted him to be a farmer, but Henry wanted to have something to do with machinery. So when he left school at 17, he became an apprentice in the machine shop of the Dry Dock Engine Works. This summary will introduce you to the autobiography that chronicles the rise and success of Henry Ford. An idea is not good because it is old or bad because it is new. But if an old idea works, then the weight of the evidence is all in its favor. Henry Ford. Chapter 2. Many inventors fail because they do not differentiate between planning and experimenting. In 1879, Henry Ford worked as an expert in setting up and repairing road engines at the Westinghouse Company of Schenectady. You shouldn't give up because you failed. Instead, learn from it and try again. Henry Ford had the idea of making some kind of a light steam car that would take the place of horses. The idea was to have a horseless carriage. As a mechanist with a workshop on the farm, he had built a steam car that ran. The engine of the steam car worked under high pressure, and sitting on a high-pressure steam boiler is not altogether pleasant. For 2 years, Ford kept experimenting with various sorts of boilers until he had to let go of the idea of running a road vehicle by steam. But he did not give up the idea of a horseless carriage. The way I work is that I draw a plan and work out every detail on the plan before starting to build. Henry Ford. Ford later returned to his family farm, and his father offered him 40 acres of timberland, provided he gave up being a machinist. He temporarily agreed because it gave him a chance to get married. He built a cottage and a workshop. When he was not cutting timber, he was working on the gas engines. He was offered a job with the Detroit Electric Company as an engineer and machinist at $45 a month. In 1892, he completed his first motor car, but it was not until the next year that it ran to his satisfaction. Chapter 3. A manufacturer is not done with their customer when a sale is completed. A machine must give service. Henry Ford was the first man to have an automobile in Detroit. He used the car for about a year, 1895 to 1896, and then sold it to Charles Ainsley of Detroit for $200. Life, as I see it, is not a location but a journey. Henry Ford. Henry Ford started a second car in 1896. It was much like the first, but a little lighter. He built 3 cars in all in his home shop. He still had the first car, which he later bought back from the man to whom Mr. Ainsley had sold it for $100. During this time, he kept his position with the electric company and earned $125 a month. But a point came where he had to choose between his job and his automobile. He chose the automobile, quit his job at Detroit Electric Company on August 15, 1899, and went into the automobile business. To succeed in business, you have to be open to new methods and willing to take risks. Henry Ford became the chief engineer at the Detroit Automobile Company and held a small amount of the stock. For 3 years, they were making cars on the model of his first car and sold very few of them. Ford found that the new company was not a means of realizing his ideas, but was more concerned about making money. In March 1902, he resigned. Until the formation of the Ford Motor Company, he worked on the development of a 4-cylinder motor. From the time he made the first car until the formation of Ford Motor Company, he built about 25 cars, of which 19 or 20 were built with the Detroit Automobile Company. Chapter 4. Service is seeking to provide something better, not only something new. Ford started building race cars. In 1903, he and Tom Cooper built 2 cars solely for speed. One was named the 999 and the other was the Arrow. Barney Oldfield took the responsibility of racing the 999. He won by half a mile. You can dissect a Ford, but you cannot kill it. Henry Ford. The 999 advertised that Henry Ford could build a fast motor car. A week after the race, he formed the Ford Motor Company as vice president, designer, master mechanic, superintendent, and general manager. The company was located at a rented Strello's carpenter shop on Mack Avenue. In their first year, the company built Model A, selling the runabout for $850 and the tonneau for $100 more. The company made and sold 1,708 cars in the first year. A good machine of any kind should be able to give value for the buyer's money. In the second year, Ford Motor Company made 3 models: the Model B, a 4-cylinder touring car that sold for $2,000, the Model C, which was a slightly improved version of Model A and sold for $50 more than the former price, and the Model F, a touring car that sold for $1,000. That year, 1,695 cars were sold, and 3 years later, in 1906, the company built a 3-story plant at the corner of Piquette and Beaubien Streets. From 1906 to 1907, Ford Motor Company had made 3 models of runabouts and roadsters and sold 8,423 cars, ranging from $600 to $750. On May 15, 1908, the company assembled 311 cars in 6 working days. In the following year, the company departed from the program that had been so successful, and Henry designed a big car. The company continued making small cars, but the 1907 panic and the diversion to the more expensive model cut down the sales to 6,398 cars. Chapter 5. Ford Motor Company was built on the principle that skilled men do not necessarily need to be in production. Henry Ford designed 8 car models, including Model T. They were models A, B, C, F, N, R, S, and K. The Model T had practically no features contained in the previous models. Ford Motor Company put out Model T for the season 1908 to 1909. Ford Motor Company has many skilled mechanics that do not produce automobiles but make production easier for others. These skilled men are the toolmakers, the experimental workmen, the machinists, and the pattern makers. Most employees come to the company unskilled. They learn their jobs within a short while. On April 1, 1913, Henry Ford experimented with the assembly line as a way of mass-producing vehicles. Motor assembly formerly done by one man was now divided into 84 operations. Those men do the work that 3 times their number formerly did. In October 1913, it required 9 hours and 54 minutes of labor time to assemble one motor. 6 months later, the moving assembly method reduced this time to 5 hours and 56 minutes. The company started assembling a motor car in a single factory. Then, as they began to make parts, they began to departmentalize so that each department would do only one thing. When people begin to think of themselves as perfect, it's difficult for them to gain new insights. None of the men in Ford Motor Company are experts. This is helpful because employees are supposed to carry the mindset that there is much to learn. Those who know their job see so much more to be done and always press forward without thinking about how efficient they are. Chapter 6. If people are unhindered, they will focus even on the smallest tasks. Ford factories and enterprises hardly have any organization. They have no specific duties per position, no lines of succession or authority, very few titles, and no conferences. Individual responsibility is complete, and the workman is in charge of his own work. Straw bosses direct the workmen under them, and the foremen take care of their group. Department heads supervise their department. The general superintendent is responsible for the whole factory. Ford factories and enterprises were designed in such a way that everyone works where they best fit. Ford's work alone controls the employees. One reason: all the people come into the factory or the offices through the employment departments. Ford Motor Company does not hire experts. Neither do they hire people based on past experiences for any position other than the lowest. Since they do not take a person on their history, they do not refuse anyone because of their past or physical condition. For more efficient work, we need to believe that there's always room for improvement. Ford Motor Company is never satisfied with the way that everything is done in any part of the organization. They always think it ought to improve and that eventually it will be done better. But the company has so few titles that people learn quickly on the job. All of the employees in the company have come up from the bottom. There is not a single person anywhere in the factory who did not simply come in off the street. Everything that the company has developed has been done by people who have qualified themselves with them. The factory management is open to suggestions, and they operate an informal suggestion system where workers can communicate any idea that comes to them and take action on it. None of Ford's machines is built without a plan. Before anything is constructed, a great deal of investigation is carried out. Chapter 7. To enhance diversity, model your organization's structure after society. The work in each department in Ford Motor Company is classified based on desirability and skill into various classes, A, B, and C, each class having 10 to 30 different operations. When a person comes directly from the employment office, they are admitted to Class C. Subsequently, as they improve, they are transferred to Class B, and go on into Class A, and into tool-making or some supervisory capacity. It is up to employees to place themselves. If they stay in production, it is because they like it. The well-being of a worker can be improved, not by having them do less work, but by aiding them to do more. When the employment department takes on an employee, the theory is to put them into a job suited to their condition. If they are already at work and do not seem able to perform, or if they do not like their work, they are given transfer cards. They take the cards to the transfer department, and after an examination, they are tried out in some other work more suited to their condition or disposition. People with different physical conditions also work in the company. At the time of the last employment analysis, there were 9,563 people with disabilities working in the company. Without the most rigid discipline, we would have the utmost confusion. When it comes to the matter of absence, employees may always apply for leave to the foreman. If they leave without notice, on their return, the reasons for their absence are investigated. In hiring employees, the only data taken are names, addresses, ages, marital statuses, number of their dependents, previous experience working for the Ford Motor Company, and sight and hearing conditions. Not a lot of questions are asked concerning what was previously done. There is what is called the Better Advantage Notice, by which someone who had a trade before coming to the company files a notice with the employment department stating what the trade was. In this way, when the company needs specialists of any kind, they can get them right out of production. Chapter 8. There will never be a system invented that will do away with the necessity of work. It ought to be the employer's desire to pay better wages than the competition, and the worker's ambition to make it possible. Only the business can pay wages. For example, you cannot distribute $150,000 if the business brings in only $100,000. A partnership begins when there is more than one person in an organization. This is great for decision-making. Before the production of Model T, profit sharing in Ford Company was by dividing a percentage of the company's earnings among the employees at the end of the year. The problem with that plan was that it had no direct connection with the day's work. A person's share did not come until after their work was done, and then it came to them like a gift. If you want a person to give their time and energy, fix their wages so that they will have no financial worries. Therefore, starting about 1913, Ford Company did a study of all the thousands of operations in the shops. With this, they were able to determine the ideal output of each worker and their allowances. They found that it is possible to get the satisfactory standard output for a day by taking into consideration the skill to arrive at a rate that will express, with fair accuracy, the amount of skill and exertion that goes into a position, and what should be expected from the worker in return for the wage. In January 1914, they created a kind of profit-sharing plan in which the minimum wage for any class of work under certain conditions was $5 a day. At the same time, they reduced the working day to 8 hours and the week to 48 hours. Did you know? It's 2021 and the Ford Motor Company, currently 117 years old, is still located in Detroit. Conclusion. Henry Ford had always had de facto control over Ford Motor Company, but he had to assume the presidency in 1943. He later retired in 1945 due to failing health. He died on April 7, 1947, of a cerebral hemorrhage at age 83. Ford Motor Company currently engages in the manufacture, distribution, and sale of automobiles. It operates through the following three segments: automotive, mobility, and Ford Credit. The automotive segment engages in the development, manufacturing, marketing, and servicing of Ford cars and Lincoln vehicles. The mobility segment includes Ford Smart Mobility, LLC, and the autonomous vehicles business. The Ford Credit segment comprises the Ford Credit business on a consolidated basis, which is primarily vehicle-related financing and leasing activities. Ford Motor Company's CEO is Jim Farley. In 2020, Ford became the leading car brand in America, selling about 1.9 million units of vehicles. It also ranked the fourth largest company in the world. Ford now sells automobiles, luxury vehicles, commercial vehicles, automotive parts, pickup trucks, and SUVs. In 2020, around 186,000 people were employed by the Ford Motor Company and entities. In 2021, the net worth of the company is $290 billion, and the number of employees is above 200,000. Henry Ford's story teaches us that our products should appeal to everyone. He even raised salaries so that they could afford the cars they were making. Throughout Henry Ford's life, he was about providing a solution to problems rather than finding faults in others. He focused on producing high-quality cars. Henry Ford believed that quality means doing it right when no one is watching. He embraced his idea as a mindset and made it a habit that sits at the center of the services he offers to his customers. He sought to teach that companies should focus on service before profit and making the world better. Although his personal life, such as his anti-Semitic views, made him a controversial character, his impact in the business world cannot be overlooked. Try this. Money isn't worth a particular amount because it will do nothing of itself. Therefore, use the money to buy tools to work with or the product of tools. As a manager of a business, try not to claim complete independence. Refer to your employees as partners because you need them to help you. Chapter 1.